Hi, my name is David Reps. I reside at 14 Castle Hill Drive. I'm currently a senior at Marlboro High School. If I can point your attention to some of the magazines in front of you that I laid out. This is last year's publication of Kaleidoscope Literary Magazine, the club of which I was president and layout editor, which unfortunately was cut with this whole budget problem that we seem to have. I understand that it's hard to find money when things like this are happening all the time. And I just wanted you to be aware of what Marlboro High School is losing with this club being lost. Let's start by the numbers. We have over 50 members in this club, which is more members than any other high school in the district for the literary magazine. In that magazine alone, we have over 75 different contributors. Different students who had their art and poetry and photography published, professionally published, and it counts as publishing on any kind of resume you put in it, but that's not important. What's important is that last year, after we distributed that magazine, a freshman came up to me and said, "Hey, look, this is me, this is my poem." And I said, "Yeah, I know, I put that in there." And he said, "Thank you." And it's things like that that make a difference. It's when students have a creative outlet for their art. And I know this year's the first year, for example, in Marlboro High School that creative writing is running. And you think that obviously students are going to learn how to write better. They're going to want their new talent, their art to come out. And this is the only way that the students in Marlboro High School have a way of showing their art to their peers, to their parents. For that magazine, we received over 200 submissions. We're the first school that made a website for our magazine. We have the largest distribution base. I don't have enough magazines for all of you because that's all the magazines we had left. And obviously, as you can see, it's a very professionally made product. The motto of the club is that it's a forum for creative exchange. And without creative exchange, art can't flourish. And we've seen that in history, and you see that every day. And in a school where art programs are getting cut daily, where elective options are decreasing, and in a school that generally doesn't foster expression and art, I would say, having a literary magazine like this is essential for the students because it lets them put their name out there. It lets them show their parents that this is what I can do. It lets them show themselves, this is what I can do. I have this talent. And I understand that I can't ask. We have the same issue as the debate team has, that the problem is the funding for the teacher who would assist us. And the advisor, yeah. We're willing to fundraise ourselves for the magazine. We're willing to do whatever it takes. Because I know there's over 50 kids in Marlboro High School who are waiting for my phone call tonight to see how it went. So I just ask you to please consider what this school is losing by having this magazine cut, and consider what it means to the students themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Gloria Close. Thank you. Leon Soronik.
One interesting mix of speakers tonight.
Very mixed.
I'm curious about how many of you watched any of the programs on NBC or MSNBC yesterday or this morning about the state of education in our country. It was unfortunate that NBC placed the first one opposite the Giants game in the afternoon and the MSNBC program against the Jets and Yankee games at night. Given the way the Giants played, there shouldn't be any excuse for not watching the afternoon program. All the programs were created in the context of the new documentary film called Waiting for Superman, which is based on a group of students waiting to be selected in a lottery system for acceptance in a high-performing charter school and how their lives are affected by these choices. In effect, it's the national version of the earlier based New Jersey documentary, The Cartel. In a nutshell, the general consensus by everyone, regardless of their political party, was that the union intransigence is the major roadblock to any kind of meaningful education reform. The current statistics show that our country ranks an average of 18th among the top industrialized nations in math, science, and literacy. Of course, there are serious demographic and cultural differences in the U.S. that other smaller nations don't have. But the bottom line is that our children coming out of our schools are going to have a poorer chance to compete against the better educated students from other countries for jobs in a global market. The main focus of all the discussions was how to raise the level of excellence among the teachers and rid the system of those who fail to perform in any meaningful way. As we all are aware, the biggest obstacle to any kind of reform is tenure and the fact that it is given much too soon to reasonably assess the effectiveness of any teacher. 3 years is too short a time for any teacher or supervisor to mature and become proficient enough on the job to gain lifetime security. With all that being said, I'm sure that individually, many of you sitting here on this board might agree with most of what I've said. The fact is that Ms. Evangelista is still being allowed to hold on to her position as assistant superintendent in charge of curriculum with all the baggage she still carries with her is a slap in the face at any attempt of reform and improvement in our system. The fact that a weighted majority of the board members symbolically rejected her reappointment demonstrate that the will is there, but not the way. Considering some of the questionable advice this law firm has given the board in the past, this is one issue worth fighting for, in spite of what Mr. Edelstein said last month about not being able to remove her. This is one case worth challenging. As long as she continues to sit on this board and smugly hold on to her position, she is a red flag to all that is wrong with our system and will be an obstacle to any kind of meaningful reform.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we've exceeded our 40-minute limit. Could I please ask that if anyone has a topic that's new that hasn't already been addressed, by all means, come on up. Otherwise, yes, sir.
Yes, hi, my name's Greg Schneck. I'm here to bring forth an issue of safety. With after-school programs, there's after-school busing, but that applies if a student is going to a school that is their home school. My daughter Jessica is in the Freehold High School. She was accepted there for one of the career path programs that are there. Her home school would have been Marlboro. She is a gifted child with a 3.97 average and does a lot of work with special needs children and stays after school for some of the programs that are available for things of that nature. Unfortunately, the late busing, because she's not in her home school, coming from of Marlboro, she comes from the Freehold High School, does not take her back to her home bus stop, but instead drops her at the town hall in the middle of the day, 4 miles from her home. My wife and I work, we can't get to her. I'm requesting that the bus drive the extra 4 miles and drop her at her home bus stop. Yeah, students, after-school
No,
students.
Marlboro Town Hall, you're saying, not Freehold Borough Town Hall.
Correct.
Marlboro Town Hall, okay.
So she's
4 miles.
essentially stranded 4 miles from home in the middle of the day. My wife and I work, we can't get to her. I don't think it's asking too much for the bus to drive 4 more miles and drop her at her own bus stop.
If the board would like, I can give some general information regarding the activity bus stops. Mr. President?
Yes, if you would, please.
As you know, the appropriation for the after-school activity buses was halved. So the way we approached it was to, and just as we had discussed, initially in some of the earlier versions of the budget, it was eliminated in its entirety. We felt that we wanted to give the parents another option from having to pick their student up at the school. And in doing so, we designed some drop points so that if the parent would prefer to pick the child up at a drop point versus the school, they would have that option. Initially, for students that went to schools that were outside of their home district, we had one bus basically leaving that home district, or in your case, sir, Freehold Borough High School, and heading to each of the other towns, Colts Neck, Howell, Freehold Township, Manalapan, Marlboro, to one of the drop points in each of those towns, to at least get the kid back into your municipality. So that would be your second option, to pick your student up there versus the high school. Over the last month, we've gotten a lot of feedback from parents. We've done our best to accommodate people by looking at areas of the map that were had under coverage, and we added some stops here and there. And the other thing that we did was we made all stops in the entire district available to all students in the entire district. So in this example, coming out of Freehold Borough, your daughter would tell the bus driver, and this is how it works, I want to go to this particular drop point, whatever the list is. So it's picking the drop point rather than just the one. The reality is, as we start to compile data, there are not that many kids, so to hit 2 or 3 drop points in another town was something that we could afford to do within the space of time that we had. I don't believe, sir, that, because I've talked to literally hundreds of people, that we ever had a conversation, did we?
No, we have not.
Okay. Were you aware that any of the drop points in Marlboro were available to you coming out of Freehold Borough High School?
Yes, and I believe this is the closest drop point.
Okay. So here's something that we've been hearing, is that parents are looking at it as if the expectation is that the student will walk home from one of these drop points. That was not what was contemplated in designing it. That's what we did do when we had twice as many buses and drivers to work with. We no longer have that many buses and drivers to work with. So within the constraints of our budget, we're doing our best to bring the kids as close to home as possible, but in many cases, in most cases, I'll say, the drop points are not designed to allow the student to walk home from there. If a family makes that decision, that's their decision. If they choose to pick up the student at the drop point, that's their decision, or make any other arrangements. That's the private, individual family's decision of how to do that. That being said, sir, we'll take a look at the area of coverage, because I don't have that map committed to memory. But to see if maybe you're in an area that is undercovered, and we're trying to be as flexible and as accommodating as possible and like I said, we're tracking the data of where are students getting off. If there are some stops that are underutilized, we'll get rid of them and add others. But the one constant is really the parameters of the budget that we have to work with. The variable is that we're trying to do the best we can with the amount of money we have. So if I could ask you to reach out to me tomorrow, and then we could talk a little bit more about your specific situation.